It is 6:01 p.m. and we are calling the meeting. I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:01 p.m. Dr. Thomas, if you would conduct our roll call.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis.
Here.
Ms. Gallagher.
Here.
Ms. Davis.
Here.
Dr. Yeager.
Here.
Dr. Dykeman.
Here.
Dr. Anderson.
Here.
Dr. Gant.
Here.
Ms. Hull.
Here.
Dr. Mattis.
Sorry, I was muted. Here.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we do have a quorum. We will move forward with our silent meditation. If you would pause for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. We'll move forward with item number 2, and this is our recognition of achievements and awards. Under that is item 2.1, our recognitions. Dr. Thomas.
Yes, at this time, I will turn it over to Ms. Beth Moore, and she will present the majority of our recognitions for tonight. And then I have one additional to share after she finishes.
Good evening. I'm pleased to be here to recognize and celebrate our students and our staff. The 18th annual Martin Luther King Jr. Freedom Breakfast, hosted by the University of Georgia, will be held tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. As part of the program, Dr. Zanona Thomas will share this year's showcase of winners from the district's annual contest, in which students create art and literature centered on an important theme and message from the works of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This year, we asked students to answer this question: how can I help achieve Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream of equality and freedom for all? A link to the event is posted on our website, and it will be included in our newsletter that's going out this evening. And these are our winners in the writing and art categories from 1st grade up until 12th grade. They will be presented in video that will be shown virtually at the University of Georgia from their Facebook page. And again, we have a link on our website. Ms. Palmer, next slide. This is a reminder that the district spelling bee is going to be held live via Zoom on January 26th at 9:30 a.m. in the morning. School winners will be competing for the opportunity to advance to the state championship, and we encourage our community to view the competition live on the CCSD YouTube channel. And the last thing that I will be presenting today is the Employee of the Month, and I ask everybody to join me in congratulating Mr. David Brownlee, a 4th grade teacher at Barnett Shoals Elementary. I'm going to start with his nomination text that was presented by another teacher. As a resource teacher, I go into many classrooms and I can say David Brownlee is one of the most dedicated, outstanding, positive teachers I have ever seen. He's built an incredible community of learners in a challenging virtual setting, treating each student with amazing care and equity. Mr. Brownlee challenges his students to be the best people they can be. He pours his heart and soul into his students, and the result is unbelievable. Mr. Brownlee is a true team player and leader within Barnett Shoals. And what you see on the screen now is a quote from Ms. Allison Nobles, the principal at Barnett Shoals. She states, "He is a champion for our Barnett Shoals scholars and creates an environment where high expectations are the norm for all of his students. He makes it his mission to connect with students beyond the classroom. As a product of CCSD, he uses the love and pride he has for this community to fuel his passion for teaching students and collaborating with colleagues. Mr. Brownlee is truly worthy of being honored as an Employee of the Month." I wish to thank the Foundation for Excellence and the Athens Area Chamber of Commerce for supporting this program. We have over $1,000 in cash and donations from local businesses. And I encourage anyone in the community to nominate an employee, and that entry form is located on the district website. So I am tag teaming with Dr. Thomas tonight, so I will now pass this over to her. You might be muted, Dr. Thomas. We can't hear you.
Thank you. I am so sorry. And I'm thrown a little bit because what it says on the screen is not what mine says, but that's okay. I'm going to continue going with what I have on my print. And we thank our nurses for nursing us back to health. I've been told by many that the nursing profession mirrors that of education, that it feels like a calling and is essential, impactful, and rewarding work. I can attest to believing that the counseling profession also shares the same opinion. I'm sorry. I want to take this opportunity to personally thank our school nursing and counseling teams for the heart and dedication they give to our students and our community. I readily admit the words, thank you, feel too small of a sentiment to express our gratitude. Our counselors are part of the school support teams, providing essential social emotional support to students and families, a task made even more daunting during this difficult time. As a part of their regular school duties, our nurses provide medical services and help educate and guide families and staff. They are also volunteering to serve our community during this pandemic. Our teams have answered thousands of questions from people in the community during this time. They volunteered at testing sites, and now they are assisting the Department of Health with vaccination efforts. Ms. Amy Rourke, the Director of Nursing Services, is a leader not only within CCSD, but the Northeast Georgia region, managing ever-changing guidelines and protocols, gathering information, asking questions, and developing plans to help us navigate the pandemic. Her expertise and guidance have been an invaluable resource for the district. We want to thank Ms. Rourke and all of our school nurses and our student service team members. The support and love you offer is powerful. Thank you for helping to nurse the Clark County School District and the Athens community back to health. So we thank our school nurses and our counselors for all that they have done for us during this time of our pandemic.
Thank you for those recognitions, and congratulations to all of those that have been recognized. Your efforts definitely, even these few minutes probably, or they don't do justice to the work that I know everyone is doing right now. Dr. Thomas, is that all for your recognitions?
Yes, ma'am, it is. Thank you.
Okay, all right, we're going to move forward to our public comments, and these are emails to be read by the board. This is item number 4.1. Ms. Palmer, I just want to confirm that in my folder, I have the one public comment. There's a written version and an audio version.
That is correct, but you have amend or adopt the agenda before public comment.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer. Sorry about that. All right.
Okay.
All right. We will reverse back to item number 3, and that is the action to amend or adopt the agenda. The floor is open.
I move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Maddox. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Dr. Dykeman?
Yes.
Okay, we have a second by Dr. Dykeman. Any questions or discussion? Okay, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for all of those of adopting the agenda that we have before us.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Yeager?
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Gant?
Yes.
Ms. Hull?
Yes.
And Dr. Maddox?
Yes.
Dr. Gant, before we move forward, I did pause. I did not know if we wanted to allow Attorney Pruitt to address our voting for tonight.
Sure, I'll be glad to. And it's just, you may have noticed that Ms. Gallagher didn't vote, and that's because she was unable to attend our swearing in ceremony with the clerk of court due to illness. And we have not been able to get that rearranged, rescheduled yet, but are in the process of doing that. And we will have her fully on board and voting ASAP.
Thank you for that clarification. I think I said, well, okay, so that motion is carried. So our agenda is adopted. That's before us. Dr. Yeager, did I see your hand? You have a question?
No, I was just giving a thumbs up to Karina.
Okay, all right, thanks. So we will move forward now with item number 4.1, which is our public comment. And I will read what I have for public comment here. And it is from Rachel Hopkins, excuse me, R. Hopkins. And it reads, "Good evening and thank you for your service. I'm a Clark Central parent, and like all high school parents in Clark County, my child hasn't been allowed to attend school since March. Like most parents in this county, I have seen the escalating negative effects of this isolation and screen time. I have contacted you about these concerns, and I'm certain many others will speak to them tonight. I believe we should do all we can to keep our teachers, students, staff, and their families safe, which is why what I want to bring to the school board's attention are the increasing number of studies that show again and again that with safety protocols in place, schools do not contribute to community spread, and in some cases decrease it. Links to full articles follow. On the day the school board announced they would keep all children out of the classroom, WUGA reported on a study that showed where infection rates were low, in-person school attendance actually lowered community spread due to safety norms that were established with children and then brought home with them. In North Carolina, half the school districts put specific health measures in place, and they found they successfully mitigated spread. No cases of in-school child to adult spread were reported, and that because the public schools are central to not only education, but to public health and the economy, their closures have a significant impact on children and families that can be safely avoided. Tulane health researchers found that school openings didn't add to the number of people in the hospital as long as the COVID-19 hospitalization rate was below 44 people per 100,000 residents. Below this threshold, they never saw any evidence of an increase in hospitalizations. On January the 2nd, that number in Georgia was 7. A study released in December calculated how the number of COVID-19 cases in the community changed if school was in person, remote, or hybrid. The researchers found that with hybrid instruction, no matter how high the community virus rate, they didn't see evidence that the school attendance increased spread. They did find that 2 of the biggest factors affecting the monthly increase in COVID-19 cases was a community's adherence to mask wearing and what percentage of the community voted for Donald Trump. Yet another study found that school reopening reduced coronavirus transmission because the schools quarantined students who tested positive. This threat, combined with strong messages sent by educators to encourage safe behavior, may have led students to also be more careful in social distancing outside of the school. And there are many more. The data increasingly shows is that the best way to protect teachers and students isn't to shut down schools. It's to focus on all the measures that will keep them and their families, friends, and neighbors safe outside of the classroom. I implore you to make decisions based on science, not fear. There is a solution to bring our children back to school safely and end the cumulative damaging effects of keeping them out. Thank you. And the links to the study follow. And again, that was from R. Hopkins. And that is all. Those are all of the public comments that I have for tonight. And so we will move forward with item number 5. And these are our committee reports. We'll start with the Government Relations Committee. Mr. Davis.
Thank you. There will be a Board of Education County Commission retreat I like the word retreat better than meeting because we have so many meetings. On Monday, January 25th, beginning at 5:30. The topic will be youth development opportunities. The emphasis comes from warning every child in Clark County to have activities after school and during the summer. Some of our presenters will be Kent Kirkpatrick from Leisure Services, Hope McGuire and Angela Pope from our own staff talking about PSP and ASP, Shannon Brooks from the Office of Early Learning and at UGA, and Grace Adams on the topic of Athens Wellbeing Project. There are, of course, a number of, and we've talked about it as a committee, there are a host of nonprofit organizations that also should be at the table, but the table just wasn't big enough. But we do appreciate and we do want to keep them in our discussions on the 25th. You know, everything from the Boys and Girls Club to the Scouts, Athens Tutorial, Chess and Community, just a host of nonprofit organizations that seek to do what this meeting is attempting to, or this retreat is attempting to focus on. One of my hopes is that we can establish some type of website that will be all inclusive so that parents can visit this website and find out all the different organizations, whether they're nonprofit or whether they're government based, and then links to how their kids can participate. So anyway, I just encourage all board members to attend. And for new board members, this is our 1, 2, 3, 4. I think this is our 4th meeting with the county commission. And I think that we've gotten a lot out of that, of these opportunities. They're every 6 months. Thank you.
I have one thing. I know that Mr. Lawrence was working on something earlier this year where he asked nonprofits to send information in about what we're doing, because you left out Destin name, Greg, okay?
Okay, I hear you.
All right, so
Okay.
I just want to, I would just like for it to be fair for the little people, the little nonprofits, okay, that work real hard with a lot of our students. We do need to be at the table, and I would like to see how we can go back to what Mr. Lawrence started earlier this year with the database that he was creating with different organizations who were doing things during COVID for young people, and see how that could be incorporated and presented at that same meeting. I don't like to be at the after meetings. I want to be at the front meetings.
I hear you.
I'm speaking for the little nonprofits.
I hear you. And I did mention a few of those, but yes.
Didn't mention Destin.
No, I did not mention Destiny. I do think that, and certainly I think Mr. Lawrence heard you loud and clear. I know he's at this meeting. But let me just say that if we can develop a website that is actually operated, and again, how we operate it, how we fund it, all has to be discussed. But where all these organizations can be funneled into, whether they are working with 6 students or whether they're working with 600 students. I think we need a source, a focus to where parents can go to find out the opportunities, the contact information, the purpose of these organizations. And so I think that we need to have, one thing we need is a website as well as a full accountability, because we want to make sure that every child has an opportunity to be involved in something after school and in something in the summertime. And I think that this pandemic has made that even more necessary. Once we get out from under this, we have a lot of catching up to do. And our students need have a whole lot of catching up to do, both socially, academically, and intramurally, all kinds of ways. So I do hear you. And I think Mr. Harris hears you too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the report. And thank you, Dr. Maddox. I would agree. Greg, is there any way that this can, I know it's a public meeting, but could this information, you said the meeting is the 25th, 5:30. Did you say until 8:30?
Yeah, typically that's how far it runs. Now we have had food, before the pandemic, which added a half hour.
Right.
So,
okay. So perhaps if this could be, I know that it's only, as you mentioned, a certain amount of time and room, but I do want to echo what Dr. Maddox said. I mean, I think it's a lot of work to be done in that area from having a centralized place, but then also for the district as well as the government to begin to figure out how do they help financially when grants and things like that and what partnerships come through. We're really talking about how do we reach students who are underserved, and a lot of these smaller nonprofits are actually reaching these students, but they're having to do so without the financial support. And so I'm not trying to hijack your agenda, but I certainly I want to echo what Dr. Maddox said, and at least make sure that we invite those individuals that may be interested, even if they participate, just to remind them that that meeting is going on, but then also place that on your radar and all of our radars as we work with the county government to work outside of us. We don't always have all of the people, the human resources and things like that, but we do have it in our community.
What I will do is I will get together with Mr. Harris and we will find a way to communicate to those organizations, to invite them to at least be present, and to also publicize, what Mr. Harris began in terms of a database. And so at that meeting, so we can all begin that they will be at the table, if not making a presentation, they will be there and they will be mentioned and credited for the work they do. So good suggestions, and Mr. Harris and I will follow through.
I have a question.
Ms. Davis?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. I understand that the Clark County Mentoring Program has started an initiative to identify all of the youth serving organizations. So are they plugged into the meeting with the county as well?
They were not. I was not
I think it's
aware.
Josh, the executive director has made this his #1 project this year, and I think I read that in one of the Envision Athens reports. So he has already started that work. So this is a great opportunity to link him in so that they don't have to be redundant in that.
Could you put his? Would you have his contact information? You can put in chat.
I will look it up.
I think Mr. Harris put a comment in the chat saying that he is working with that gentleman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, great. Okay, super. Thank you. So that you already have that connection. Thank you.
Great.
And one other is Shane Blackwell with the Northeast Business, Georgia Business, because I'm a nonprofit, but I work through them. So also Shane Blackwell as well, just to make sure all demographics and everybody are reached.
Well, I can see this is going to be a lively discussion on the 25th, so I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you for that update, Mr. Davis, as well as for your efforts to define that relationship a little bit more and have more specific things that we're working on with the county government. Did I hear someone else? I think I may have interrupted someone. Ms. Davis, was that you?
I heard Dr. Anderson, I believe Dr. Garrett.
Okay, Dr. Anderson?
My comment was just a really basic one that perhaps during this meeting, focusing less on the repository and more on the process would also be super helpful. For several years, Leisure Services did have a website active that allowed students or ACC communities to enroll in summer programs. So that's been done before. And I think where the failure lied in the past was more in the process. And it left a lot of parents angry, frustrated, and without summer programming. So, just kind of remember the past and things that have been implemented and some you know, some of the best practices and maybe failures, and then focus maybe on those as well.
I think
That's it.
Yeah, I think, and that's something that you may, Dr. Anderson, you may have to reiterate on the 25th, so that we hear that loud and clear.
Sounds good.
Great. Thank you very much for that update and that discussion. Dr. Yeager, Policy Committee.
Thank you, Dr. Gant. So as you know, in 2020, we reviewed 75% of our out-of-date policies, and we have about 25% of those policies left to work through, and we intend to do that this year. On January 3rd, Mr. Harris, Ms. Tillman, Mr. Pruitt, and I met to discuss ways of improving the process further. We're still not completely satisfied with how it's been working. We want to be more transparent and we want to be more efficient. So my commitment is to file better reports that provide the explanations and the justifications for our recommendations, so that all board members can see what our thought processes are. And I pledge to start doing that in February. Our next policy meeting is Thursday, January 21st, and the agenda for that meeting includes finishing up a few E policies, a few K policies, and then we have some J policies from Dr. Watley. We aren't going to tackle all the J policies right away. We think that we need to have a discussion as a board, hopefully at our retreat, about some of the safety and disciplinary issues that we want to talk about as a board. So many of the J policies address school discipline, and we'd really like to hear more from the board before we move forward on that front. So once we get through these loose ends, our next plan is to work with Mr. Gaskins on the I policies. He has been working very hard behind the scenes, I understand, even though he's been very busy, to really address some of the out-of-date I policies. So that's what you can expect in the March meeting. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Yeager. We'll move forward with item 5.3, which is our property committee. And I don't think we have a property committee, but Ms. Davis and Dr.
Yes, I was about to say, I think that it would be great if we can have our discussion soon about our committees, period, because as vice president, I'm certainly willing to carry on these committee meetings. I just think we need a little bit more direction from the board in terms of how we're going to pursue that, if we're going to continue to have those committees, the property and the finance committee, because I'm vice chair of each one. So yes, I'm more than happy to arrange those meetings and get them scheduled, but I would like to make sure that we fill in the vacancies on our committees prior to that.
Can I ask a question or make a comment?
Sure.
So at the COC, the Citizens Advisory Committee, for the SPLOST meeting we had this week, I brought this up that the discussion about committees is reaching the board, and I know Mr. Fisher commented that the property committee is an important committee from his perspective, because he really feels like there's a lot of things that the property committee can address at the small committee level that should not necessarily go to the full board. So before we discuss throwing out the policy committee, I would like to include Mr. Fisher in the discussion so that he can tell the full board basically what he told the COC about the importance of the policy committee. And also, we should probably have a policy committee meeting soon. Mr. Gilbreth has some information to share.
I'm very anxious for that to happen. Good.
Yeah,
Thank you,
so maybe we can call one, Ms. Davis, maybe we can call one for either this month or early next month.
I would be very delighted about that.
I've
But we're
asked,
down 2 people, so we don't have quorum. We need a third. We need the assignments for that committee to
Yes.
actually have.
So we have our action item 12.3, I think, it looks at the temporary committees. And so I think we'll be able to resolve that there. And we also have this as an item on our retreat agenda that we're putting together. So I don't think the discussion tonight will be in depth about like committees that need to be, dissolved and those that need to be filled. Dr. Thomas.
I was going to say the same thing. I'm sorry, Dr. Gann. I was just going to say that I had reached out to Mr. Gilbert and also to you so that we can move forward as soon as we're able in terms of having a quorum to schedule a property committee meeting.
That'd be great.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Thomas, Ms. Davis, and Dr. Yeager. Okay, we will move forward with our finance committee.
I think we have the same situation there.
Okay.
I don't think we have quorum for finance either, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. And we can revisit that to see if we want to, with those committees, like keep the remaining members and just sort of have a committee of 3. I think when I looked over it and like did some updates, but okay, thank you, Ms. Davis, and we can talk about that a little bit more later.
Yeah, I'm anxious to have that committee meeting too, because I watched the governor's speech today and $21 million headed our way and some other things. I'm real excited. So yes.
All right. Moving forward with the board president report, the only thing I will add is that be sure you save the date for our retreat, which is at the end of this month. I think I sent out those dates. I'm sorry, yeah, the 29th and the 30th. Over the next several days, I'll be building a tentative agenda based on feedback from you all several months ago, as well as pulling in our self-assessment report as well. And I'll send out sort of a draft of that before we make it official in case you all have like any feedback or you want to change some things around or suggest suggestions. But that is all that I have for my report. Dr. Thomas, I guess Dr. Thomas, leading into your report, I guess the only other thing, and we discussed this last week, will be the communication that will be going out to the public about the Cognia visit.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. And I think Ms. Moore was going to work with you all on that, and I can follow up. I know she is on, as well as Mr. Harris, so we can follow up on that as well.
Okay, thanks.
And my report for tonight is pretty short as well in the interest of time. I did want you all to know, as I mentioned, our nurses are working collaboratively with the Department of Public Health to help them in their efforts to vaccinate our community. As you all have heard, I'm sure it has been a very overwhelming task for DPH, so I'm very appreciative of our nurses for joining in on that effort. CCSD employees over the age of 65 have been contacted now by DPH and offered a priority appointment at the new vaccination site. Let's see, what else? As all of you have heard, and Ms. Davis just referenced, we are slated to receive $21.6 million from CARES funds. Those funds are intended to support the work of districts over the next 3 years. So we are really excited to have those funds, and we have talked just initially very early discussions about ways that we can support the instructional needs, operational infrastructure, support, and personnel needs of the district. And as many of you have also heard, the state announced a one-time bonus of $1,000 for all school-based staff. And prior to hearing that from the state, we had already initiated discussions as a team for a way to show our gratitude to our staff. So we will continue those discussions. We will not cease having those talks, even though the state has now offered or said that they're going to provide a $1,000 bonus to all staff. We will continue to explore ways that we can utilize our funds to also support our staff and show appreciation for their work during these times, as well as looking at instructional methods. We really are talking about innovation in terms of instructional models, how we support our students in the community, and recognizing that education will probably never return back in a true form to the brick and mortar as we have known it of the past. So how can we be proactive and creative in meeting the needs of our students and providing the support that they need utilizing these funds over the next 3 years? And the only other thing we had is that we do get a lot of feedback. Feedback comes to you all as a board, sometimes directly to us at the district level. So we are working with our principals on how to make sure our parents are informed on how to get feedback to the buildings. How do we effectively utilize our LSGTs and other structures in the schools so that parents are getting their concerns heard and questions answered? So that's something that we're moving forward in our work on, and that concludes my report.
I've got a question, Dr. Thomas.
Yes, sir.
Can you repeat about the COVID vaccine information?
Right now, DPH has contacted staff that are 65 and older, and they are being given a priority appointment at their new site. I think it's off of Oneida Street, if I'm correct. So they have started with our CCSD staff who are ages 65 and older, and the remainder of our staff are in category 1B, and we're waiting to hear about what we will be able to do next with them. And we have reached out to other community agencies and entities to see if they can also support us in getting our staff vaccinated. We sent surveys out to staff, and we had only heard from, I think last I knew, about 600 or so people. Of that 600 or so, 93% had said that they would want the vaccine, but we still have another 1,800 to 2,000 staff members who have not responded to the survey.
If I could just make one observation, Dr. Thomas, and I feel like that the state has continued to kind of underestimate what's needed to keep our kids and our educational schools open. And I know that has nothing to do with you, has nothing to do with this board per se, but I don't know why people like myself are being highlighted 1A when school teachers who need to be vaccinated, and bus drivers and custodians who need to be vaccinated so that they can work with our students. I just don't, I feel like that's on the state level, but I just want to say publicly, I don't think that the state's emphasis on who to vaccinate is up to what I would like to see. Just an opinion.
Yes, sir. I do hear that, and we do have specific categories of staff who, are potentially at greater risk than others, and we want to be sure that all of our staff are given the opportunity to receive the vaccine as quickly as possible. And we are working, and that's why we're being creative in trying to use other entities to help support us in that work.
Dr. Thomas.
Yes, ma'am.
I have I was contemplating whether to ask the question or not, but I'm going to ask it. In terms of staff currently, how is it decided if some staff are working in the schools and some are not, like right now? Why isn't all staff not, why isn't it one thing for everybody?
I wish, I can't answer that because I don't know specifically what you're speaking to, Dr. Maddox.
I'm saying right now in terms of faculty working in schools and safety of people working in the schools right now, how is it decided who reports inside of our buildings right now? Because I don't know why I thought that all staff in the schools were working from home. I didn't know that some schools had some staff working in the schools.
I don't want to speak to that because I don't know specifically. If there's an issue that needs to be addressed, you can talk to me about that. I know some staff are working in their buildings for a variety of reasons. Some people don't have internet at home and ask for special clearance to be in their schools because they can't teach their children from home. That was the same case when we were virtual before.
Okay.
And so there are people with unique circumstances that have asked to be at the building because they can't do their jobs from home. If you're suggesting that some people are required to be in,
Required. Yeah,
I can't speak to that in this form without having specific detail.
Okay.
Now I do know that some people are required to work because we're still feeding children.
No, I'm not talking about feeding children. Okay, I'll talk to you about it.
Yeah, we probably need to have that conversation offline.
Okay.
I know some people have requested to be in the building because they just don't have the resources at home to support the need.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just thought that I don't know why I thought for safety that all schools were closed right now. Okay.
Generally so, but again, we have to be able to support children. So if there's 2 or 3 teachers in a building and they're spread out and they're not having contact with each other and with children, we are allowing that because otherwise those kids wouldn't be able to have the instruction that they need.
Okay.
So I don't know the specifics of that, but we can talk offline.
Okay.
Dr. Thomas?
Yes.
If I could follow up with a kind of a similar question. It was wrong. Someone communicated, I think, to the entire board, I'm not sure, but about our sports programming and that it's being continuing and that type of thing. What is the update in terms of our sports activities and specifically they mentioned buses?
Our sports programs are technically governed, even though they come under our governance, but they are governed by GHSA, and that who determines their competition and whether they will move forward with competition or not. So what we have done is supported those students. However, we have a very strict COVID protocol that has been followed. And if there is or a report of a positive case, it is handled like any other incidents are handled. Those students and those teams are quarantined. The individuals are in isolation. Anyone that has contact with them is notified. And then in terms of visitors or guests at sporting events, we have reduced that to 25% and have taken precautions at each of our gymnasiums and fields so that like people are seated every other row. So, but with a 25% maximum capacity. But those groups are continuing right now to operate by Georgia High School Association protocol. And then we have our guidelines of requirements for reporting any positive cases and not allowing those teams. So most of our teams have had periods of 2 or 3 weeks out, and anyone that's connected, and that includes practice as well as games, if there is a positive case reported.
So from what I hear you saying, it's really not in our jurisdiction to close down the sports activities.
I guess we could go against Georgia High School Association, Mr. Davis, and say that our students are not going to participate. And I know one district did that and then they came back off of that. So it is an option that we could say we're going to pull our children from GHSA competition. We could also go as far as saying that we could have GHSA competition, but with no spectators. I want us to be cautious when we start making those decisions that we are not reacting in a way that is ultimately going to be detrimental to our children, i.e., for many of our children, this may be the only way they are able to attend college. It may be the only way they get scholarships for college. So as in any decision I've tried to make, I don't want to do that in a hasty manner, because sometimes, as the old saying is, you can cut off your nose to spite your face. You can throw out the baby with the bathwater. So we have a population of children, many of whom I know that have football scholarships. And I've looked back and asked myself, had we canceled the season, how many of these children would have been able to attend college? So I'm not just about sports, but I do look at how for many of our children, athletics are their way out of situations that they might not otherwise have a way out of. So I am open to us having that discussion, but I do want to be very transparent in my thinking when we talk about totally getting rid of athletics and we talk about equity and we look at all of our children who, again, might not have access to post-secondary opportunities, would have access to without athletics.
And I think you make an excellent point. And I was simply raising it because someone communicated, about, special needs children and small settings and everything. So I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying at all. It's just respecting that person's opinion that.
Oh yes, I totally understand. And we have made special efforts. I think Mr. Gaskins, and I don't know if he wants to speak to that, but has really made conscientious efforts. And we're being very clear in our communications now, because we think about a lot of things that we don't always articulate. And when people don't hear their group called, the assumption is that it's not thought about. And that's totally understandable. I'm the same way. So we have really worked to be very intentional in our communication to specifically name groups. And I know Mr. Gaskins had worked to have some of that conversation about when we were looking at returning, looking at some of our specialized populations, of which our students with IEPs are that group. And so, we've looked at them, we've looked at our homeless population. So you're exactly right. And I get it from everyone's perspective. You can say, well, why can they go shoot a basketball, but my kid can't come to class? And so I totally understand that, but I just wanted to be clear in the conversations that we're having as a district, that it's not that we're just saying, oh, well, they go shoot basketball, they can win a championship, that gives notoriety. I want people to understand that for many of our kids, this is about so much more than what's happening in those almost 5 or 6 games they get to play this year, because most of the season has been canceled for them. But we do try to look at the entire picture. Mr. Gaskins, is there anything you want to add about our special populations?
I will just add that we did include that communication to parents, that it is our priority to bring back those specialized populations. And then we met with principals, today is Thursday, so we met with principals yesterday and presented that same information, that we will begin in the beginning of the planning process to return, that those specialized populations will be our first priority to return.
Are there any other questions we can answer? We're happy to do so. It's a difficult position to be in, and it's difficult decisions to make. And I feel it from both sides, and I have opinions on both sides, and we're trying to act in a manner as quickly as possible to get our students back to face-to-face instruction.
May I ask 2 questions?
Yes, ma'am.
The first is about the update that was going to be provided on the 19th, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still going to happen?
Yes, that is still our intent. Is that correct, Mr. Harris?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the second was, is there a way to share school updates on multiple mediums? Especially safety and reopening plans?
Can you ask that again? I think I missed part of it.
Is there a way that the communications office can share reopening plans and other really important information on multiple mediums? So not just via a letter sent to emails? I mean, parents communicate with the school system in many different avenues. And I feel like we're missing opportunities to communicate with parents when we limit the way that we communicate with them.
So Dr. Anderson, for an example, would you be referring to maybe, I know I get messages from the via telephone from a recorded message. I know that some people post it to social media, so maybe using some of those different sources to communicate that we have, you're saying pushing it out through all of those so that everyone has an equal opportunity to receive it.
Correct.
And that's Mr. Harris. I know you're listening, so you're making notes of that, correct?
Yes, ma'am. We can push it out on social media and use the phone dialing system. The one thing with the phone dialing system, we probably wouldn't put the whole message on there, considering they tend to be pretty long communications. But we can say that a communication has been pushed and where to reference it at. And then we can also add it to our social media pages.
Okay. And I think featuring reopening plans more prominently on the website would also be really helpful for parents to be able to access them more easily.
We can do that. Thank you.
All right, so I am going to move us along and just sort of reiterate, you know, as we have questions, if we have suggestions, to please reach out directly to Dr. Thomas. And, you know, any concerns that you hear, any suggestions, recommendations, any support that we can provide, I want to encourage us to reach out. The board meetings are a great time, but we know there's a lot that we don't get into board meetings, and we also want to be able to use this time efficiently. I know that we can't always predict because new information comes up, but I do just want to share that reminder to be sure to reach out directly if there are concrete suggestions or even concerns that you receive. Dr. Thomas, does that conclude your report?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we will move forward with our item 8.1, and this is our financial report that we'll need to take action on. Dr. Thomas and Mr. Schooneman.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Schooneman will present our financials at this time. I think we had some questions from maybe Ms. Davis. Possibly at the last meeting, but I'm not sure. I might be thinking about our Mr. Gilbert's report, Dr. Gant, but Mr. Schooneman will present that.
Dr. Thomas, I don't see Mr. Schooneman on the call.
Okay.
So I didn't have any questions about the finance report. I think that more than anything, I was concerned about our finance committee meetings, and so we'll definitely address that when we get to item 11, I believe. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
So Dr. Gant, thank you, Ms. Davis. I was trying to keep in my mind which one we had discussed. Dr. Gant, I know he reviewed these financials last week. So if no one has any questions, it would be my recommendation that those be accepted. I know Mr. Schooneman has been ill this week, so I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to join. But those were presented very thoroughly last week, and I would recommend that they be approved.
Okay. So we have a recommendation for the financial reports to be approved. The floor is open for motion.
I so move.
Ms. Davis, motion.
A second.
Okay, Ms. Hall, are there any follow-up questions or discussion? Okay, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll on all of those in favor of accepting the financial reports, the November 2020 financial reports.
Okay, Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Dr. Yeager?
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Gant?
Yes.
Mrs. Hull?
Yes.
And Dr. Maddox?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we have adopted or accepted the November 2020 financial reports. We will move forward to item number 9.1, and these are our policies, regulations, exhibits to be adopted, rescinded, revised, or reviewed. Dr. Yeager.
Yes, thank you. We discussed these last week. There are 12 total policies that we approved to be the recommendations to be moved to public review in December 10th, and they've been up for public review for a month now. As far as I know, Mr. Harris, you can confirm there has been no public comment on these revisions. So I would ask that we accept these recommendations.
Okay. Thank you. The floor is open.
I second the recommendation.
Well, can we have a motion?
Oh, I
So,
thought she made one.
recommendation?
I thought she made one. I make a motion.
Oh, okay.
I make a motion that we adopt all the policies listed under 9.1.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Second.
Dr. Maddox made the second. Any follow-up questions or discussion? Okay, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for all of those in favor of adopting, rescinding, or revising the policies listed in 9.1.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Davis, Ms. Davis,
No.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Dr. Hull,
Yes.
and Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Okay.
7 in favor and 1 opposed.
Okay, so that motion carries. Those policies have been accepted as they are as indicated. Item number 10, our personnel items. We have item 10.1, which are our personnel recommendations, 10.2, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and 10.3, a personnel addendum. Dr. Thomas, I'll turn the floor over to you for these.
Yes, ma'am. You all received the initial personnel list last week. We did add 2 addendum items that were shared with you via email. And based on the feedback I received, it is my recommendation that these 3 items be approved tonight.
Okay.
I so move.
Okay, Ms. Davis, your motion is that all 3 of these items be accepted?
Yes, please.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Davis made the second. Any follow-up questions or discussion for the record?
Very excited about that last one.
Me too.
Me 3.
Okay. All right. Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for all in favor of adopting these 3 items.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Ms. Hull,
Yes.
and Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So those personnel items have been approved. We'll move forward to item number 11, and this is our consent agenda. And it consists of items 11.1 through 11.6. And just for the record, and for those who might be either listening or viewing, these are our December 10th board meeting minutes. Item 11.2 are the legal services. Item 11.3 is our intent to apply for a pre-K transition program grant. 11.4, the intent to apply for a pre-K annual grant. And then item 11.5 is our annual Head Start early, to approve the annual Head Start Early Head Start program. And item 11.6 is to approve the FY 2022 budget timeline. So the floor is open for a motion.
Madam President, I move that all items on the consent agenda be approved.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, and Dr. Maddox for the second. Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for all of those in favor of adopting the items on the consent agenda.
Yes, Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Mrs. Hull,
Yes.
Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Thank you. So that motion carries. We'll move forward to other action items under number 12. The first item is 12.1, and this is the action to approve resolution to request a facility phase out of Clark Middle. I'll open the floor for a motion. I think someone had questions around this, but I'm assuming those questions have already been answered or asked, but I will open the floor for a motion.
So I will move that. I'm sorry. Does someone else want to make that motion?
Well, I thought this was removed from the consent agenda.
Yes, and I asked it to be removed because I think it's a really big deal that we're about to launch a new building project. And I thought that it should have a little bit more fanfare than just being, sucked up in the consent agenda. So I think it's great that, again, we can actually say to our taxpayers how their money is being spent in terms of this new venture. So I'm excited about it.
Mr. Gilbert is available and prepared, Dr. Gann, if you would like for him to give any additional information about this item in regards to them meeting with the local building committee from the school and COC. So if you would like for him just to give a brief overview of what's been done towards this end, he is available and prepared to do so.
Okay, well, yeah, okay, I guess before we open the floor, have the motion, if he could just give us that additional information.
Okay, you have two documents for you. One is the actual resolution, which is required by Georgia DOE whenever we do a building project, especially if we're going to tear a building down and build a new one. This is required by DOE, and it also allows us to do a capital outlay application for additional funding from the state in regards to this project as well. The other document you have is an executive summary from the building committee first meeting. And like I said, we had a survey that was sent out to over 160 responses, primarily 52 questions dealing with space and condition of the building. Over 90% of the responses were negative as to the existing space constraints and also with condition of the building. So the survey respondents were definitely in favor of a new building. And I kind of went through also the Clark Middle has sustained growth of about 3% per year. We've got a lot of new building permits on the west side of town. So in analyzing everything, we need to expand and or make the school larger than what it currently is. We analyzed renovation versus new build construction cost. And by currently, the existing classrooms are substantially smaller than the DOE standard. So to bring those up to current standards and also the support spaces, we would have to add approximately 30 to 40,000 square feet. So by the time you renovate, expand, add on, you're at almost the same cost as a new build. So anytime we get within 70 to 80% of a renovation cost, our recommendation is to build new. So that's what we're pursuing. And we'll have approximately $10 million from SPLOST 5. And then we're counting on the approval of SPLOST 6, and we'll take about $20 million from SPLOST 6 to do the Clark Middle new building.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. This will be the second school, actually, the only school that I attended that is still standing is Clark Central. So there we go. When this one is gone, there go my junior high years. Thank you.
Thank you for that information and that overview. The floor is open. If there are not any additional questions and further discussion. Just checking.
No questions, but I'll make the motion.
Okay, Ms. Davis, can you state your motion for us?
Sure, my motion is that we approve the action to request a facility phase out for Clark Middle School, formerly Clark Junior High. Clark Junior High.
A second.
All right, so we have a motion by Ms. Davis and a second by Dr. Yeager. For the record, any follow-up questions or discussion? Okay, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll for us, for all in favor of approving this motion?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson, Dr. Anderson, Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Dr. Hull. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hull. Sorry.
Yes.
Dr. Maddox,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson back.
She says she's having internet issues, but she says yes in the chat.
Attorney Pruitt, can that count?
Yes, ma'am, that counts.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So that motion carries. We'll move forward with item 12.2, and this is our action to renew school resource officer MOU, the MOU for 2021 and 2022. Is there any, I know there have been some questions and information provided. So before I open the floor, I guess I should see if there's any additional information.
I do have the answers, Dr. Gant. We did get a pretty exhaustive list, a second list from Mr. Davis, and Chief Sizemore did work on those. And I can respond individually if you all would like for me to, or I know it had some scenarios, and I can tell you in all of those cases, the first person to attempt to respond is going to be an administrator, not a law enforcement officer. But in some instances, it is just whoever is closest. If there is something, an incident that is occurring where a student or a staff member's safety is being jeopardized, then whomever is closest to that individual will be the one that responds. But in other cases, administrators handle it first, and then they will engage the support of a law enforcement officer if deemed necessary based on whatever that particular referral is. And Mr. Davis, you had asked about specific skill sets that an ACCPD SRO would have that is not needed for ACCPD police officer. The skill sets that are desired and required for SROs in the school are also needed to be effective in the community. The difference would be the specialized participation in trainings that were shared by Dr. Watley and Chief Sizemore last week, like policing the teen brain, or some of the trainings that are offered by our social work department or counseling department. So those are the significant differences or additions that they would have. You mentioned educational requirements for unarmed, that's a high school diploma or a GED equivalent. Security or law enforcement experience is preferred. About, handcuffs and some of those things. And so we do have some specific, if you all are looking for data of that nature, we can get a report out to you. But we've had arrests made in extreme instances of fighting or other serious assaults, if there's a weapon on school property, and if there's a distribution of drugs. Students who can be arrested and taken to jail if they are 17 and older. If they are 16 and under, they can be referred to juvenile court. And I don't mind sharing these written responses with you, Mr. Davis, and I can share that with the entire board as well.
Yes, that would be great if you could share that with the entire board. I think I saw Paul.
Yeah, so I'll just say initially I had some concerns in us renewing this contract and voiced those concerns at the last meeting. However, I think when we look at making sure that we're not contributing to the school to prison pipeline. That is something that can really be controlled in our policies that address discipline, interrogations, and police interviews. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm really excited about the work that we will do with that. So I just wanted to put that out there since I was very concerned about that at the last meeting.
Thank you, Attorney Hull. We actually have already started working on and I think Mr. Gaskins is back on. It might have even happened this week, but I know we have looked at putting on the agenda, ensuring that our building leaders are aware of those policies so that actions are not taken that can negatively impact long-term outcomes for our students, and that can help to lead to the school to prison pipeline. So you bringing that up last week helped us to recognize where there might be a blind spot, that even if you have the policy in place, if people are not aware of the policy, then it does no good. So based on that conversation, we then had conversations to make sure that we're providing our building leaders with that appropriate information so that they can protect our students and ensure that they're treated fairly by the legal system as much as we can in the building.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Dr. Thomas, if I can kind of build on that, I mean,
Yes, sir.
I've spent a good number of hours trying to research this topic, and one piece of information that I've been able to tease out is it does seem that schools that have police walking the hallways do have higher instances of arrests taking place within the school. Now, the argument could be made that that means that schools that lack those resources are overlooking crimes that are being committed. So, you know, I guess you could look at it that way as well. But I'm not sure how we're going to simply address that by policy. But maybe Ms. Hull, if you could kind of clarify, because you've got a background in this, how do you think policy is going to address both the instances of arrest and also the for lack of a better word, I guess, the equity of those arrests, and so that we're not singling out, you know, because you know statistically what happens nationwide. So how do we avoid that?
So I'm looking at our policies. Dr. Watley and Dr. Maddox and I had a really great discussion around some of those policies, specifically the one regarding interrogations and interviews by law enforcement with our students. What our current policy states, and Dr. Watley, please correct me if I misstated, is that a student can be interrogated or interviewed by law enforcement so long as a school official is present, without parental consent, without a parent being present. And so we are having discussions about modifying that policy to make sure that those rights that a child would have in their home or, you know, out in the community adhere to school. So if that law enforcement officer wants to interrogate a child at school, then that parent still needs to provide the same consent that would be necessary, so that law enforcement is not looking to the school to be a loophole to get around that child's rights, that parent's rights, to make sure that they're given consent, or at the very least, that they're present when their child has been interrogated, especially if the results from those interrogations can lead to charges that stem in juvenile court or even adult court. So just looking at our policies, looking at how our school district treats law enforcement interactions with our students, I think that would be a better way to kind of monitor and make sure that we're really being true to the spirit of our policies to make sure we're protecting our students. You're muted, Greg.
You're muted.
Okay, if I could focus again to either of you, but again, I'm with Ms. Hull's legal experience, how do we? I mean, there are instances that take place, and having been a retired educator, K-12, certainly aware of students being engaged in activity that law enforcement, in my estimation, would be forced to make an arrest because it is a legal violation, whereas school administration would be somewhat they may look at it differently in terms of for example, an example of a child having a small amount of marijuana. Now, I know we have procedures in place in terms of juvenile court, that person being referred to, and I know that there's a whole process now that's been built up since I retired around the juvenile court. But I mean, are there instances where law enforcement would have to be, even if who are assigned to the school, would have to make an arrest or make a referral, whereas an administrator may deem it more appropriate to use other channels? For instance, maybe counseling, maybe some type of retribution. I mean, not retribution, but some type of
restorative justice.
Yes, and I'm just trying to weigh the idea that a police officer, again, is his or her primarily are trained to maintain law and order. Whereas, the training of a school administrator is to, run the school, but the mission is to educate children. And of course, you can't educate them if they're not there. So I'm just asking. I would like to get the benefit of y'all's discussion a little bit more.
May I interrupt real quick before you answer, Mrs. Hull? One thing that may be helpful, because I don't know that we'll resolve this tonight, but I'm not trying to diminish the discussion, but I definitely think that this discussion deserves maybe even more attention. And so, I think it could have implications for Dr. Yeager, and certainly maybe the retreat, but I don't even know that the retreat would be fully enough time. And so I don't know if that means we need a special call meeting. And I would probably defer to Dr. Thomas and Dr. Yeager as well as, how this really loops in with our strategic plan and where we're headed. And I don't know that tonight we're going to be able to do that justice, but I also want to recognize and validate the concerns that you have, Mr. Davis, the concerns really that many of us have about the school to prison pipeline and the role that the school plays in that. I want to be sure that we are using our time efficiently, but also thinking of other ways, in fact, that we can have more in-depth discussion about this. So I just want to put that there, and Ms. Hull.
Well, I'll be very brief. I caught what you were throwing, Dr. Gans. I'll be very brief. Mr. Davis, my response to that is that if we truly want to make sure that that is not what is happening in our school, my opinion is we're going to have to do a mind shift. We're going to have to make sure that our school resource officers aren't seen for the first time by students in the hallways, but maybe we really do what community policing calls for, and we're having our police officers, our student resource officers actually build and be a part of the community to be helpful in our schools. So I don't think it's going to be an easy fix. I think it's going to be a complete mind shift and a lot of different stakeholders and entities are going to have to come together to make sure that our policies are aligning with what we want to have happen, and that the people that we are placing in our schools, be it police officers, student resource officers, administrators, staff, whoever is coming in contact with our children, are really holding true to what we want them to represent with the Clark County School District. So I'll make that my short answer until we get a complete form to flesh it out.
And Dr. Gann, if I can speak, and I'll try to be as short as Attorney. We have committed to having a work group to examine just our overall work and how we support students in general. So that is my first response. Secondly, is that I would like for us to look, because the school to prison pipeline and inequity and issues of social justice are very real. And I don't want anyone to walk away from here and say that Sonona Thomas said this isn't an issue, because it's a very real issue for many of our children of color. But I would like for us to carefully examine our data for Athens Clarke County, and not to ignore the issue and not to have supports in place to address the issue. But I don't want us to project what could be more severe in other places on our SROs and their actions with students. So I would like for us to utilize our own data rather than just looking at statewide or national data, so that we come up with responses that are aligned with our needs rather than responses that are more global in nature. So I think that is important, that we ensure that we're looking at Athens Clarke County and not just looking at what's happening nationally. And then my last point would just be, when you asked Mr. Davis about something being an arrest that otherwise would not have, I ask that you continue to keep in mind that the first person to interact with a student, again, unless it is something that is life-threatening or danger, the first person that's going to interact with that student is going to be a building administrator. Building administrators always have some level of discretion in how they handle. We have a code of conduct, we have law, we have defects requirements, but administrators have discretion in how they handle issues. So I think we need to keep that in mind. So it's not that something happens and they go straight to the police. Something happens and they go to that school administrator, and that school administrator utilizes their knowledge about that student, the situation, other external factors to make a decision prior to engaging the police, unless it is something that's very egregious in nature. So having an SRO present does not negate the authority and the involvement of our building leaders. They still are there to do their job, to advocate for students, all of the students, the student that may be in trouble as well as every other student in that building, but it's their job to do that. And then they will engage law enforcement just as they would if the law enforcement were not there. They would make the decision if this is something that needs to go to another level. So I don't want us to suggest that having SROs there take away the discretion that our building leaders have, because that's definitely not the case.
And also, Dr. Thomas, Dr. Gann, I know I'm gonna be even shorter than Dr. Thomas. A part of that conversation with Attorney Hull and Dr. Maddox today was largely around bringing multiple stakeholders to the table. So for example, Prison to Pipeline doesn't just involve schools. It also involves the juvenile justice system. It also involves the community at large. And so we all hold a responsibility in breaking that pipeline to prison. Just like in special education, I liken it to special education does not hold the timeline for compliance. The entire system, student support services, everybody has to share in that process. So we all have to work in a team to eradicate disproportionality, break the pipeline to prison. It's not just resting in one department. And so that's why my Department of Student Services is going to partner with Chief Sizemore as well as juvenile justice, so that we can all work on this together. It's not just a one person or one department or one entity kind of initiative.
And if I may say, that is exactly what is happening in the conversations with Safe Athens through Envision Athens, where you have the judges there, you have law enforcement there, our school is there, our school system is there. So this is one of their subjects. And so the good news is that there is some place for this to land, and where wherein all of the entities that would be affected by juvenile justice, by the school to prison pipeline, by how we police our community. And it's not just our policing our community, it's all of the schools and all the different school systems. And so all of these people are at the table through the Envision Athens, Safe Athens initiative. And so again, I would highly recommend that if we are not as visible there as we can be, then certainly that there is another place to land with some of these things that would go beyond the doors of Clark County School District.
So I'm gonna move us forward and definitely encourage us to continue this conversation. Just as a reminder, we are at action 12.2, and that is the action to renew the school resource officer MOU. And so I'm going to open the floor for a motion.
Madam President, I move that we adopt or approve the MOU for the SRO, the MOU with Athens Clark County Police Department.
Can you please repeat that motion?
I move that we approve and accept the MOU between CCSD and the Athens Clark County Police Department. Item 12.2.
I'll second.
So that was Ms. Davis for the motion and Dr. Yeager for the second. For the record, any additional comments or questions?
Dr. Gant, I just make a very short, I'm not going to drag this out. I just want to say that at this time, I'm going to be voting no, not because I can't be persuaded, but because typically we want the data and then make the decision, not make the decision and then get the data afterwards. And I do want to point out that my understanding is that we are voting on next year's. So it's January. So, you know, conceivably we could have this vote next month or the month after and still not break a sweat. But I just wanted to explain that that's why I'm voting no at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Davis, for that explanation.
Does this not have to be approved in January?
It's my understanding that it always comes to the board here in January and it goes to the ACC Commission and it's for the 21-22 school year. Is that correct, Chief Sizemore?
I thought we were on a timeline to them.
That's correct, Dr. Thomas. That's correct.
So it is usually submitted. So I think there's a process, is my understanding, and I could be wrong.
It's normally submitted in January so that it goes to them in February. I'm assuming set up that way for budget purposes so that, you know, they can build that into their budget and we can too.
Thank you, Chief Sizemore and Mr. Fisher.
Okay. Dr. Thomas, Dr. Fitz, did you have a question or comment?
I just want to ask Greg. I understand what I understand and agree with Greg, but I just want to know, we don't have an alternative, like I agree with what you're saying, but I just right now for the safety of our students who are in the schools right now, like what would, we don't have an alternative. Like if it's, I just want to know if do you have some alternative that you would recommend? I'm trying to make a decision, but I just want to hear from you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Maddox. What I'm talking about is the removal of weapons, of sidearms. I am not supporting the removal of security. There are SROs in many schools that do not have a sidearm. I mean, they've got pepper spray, they got handcuffs, they got tasers. I get back to my original concern and what does it say to a young person that authority comes in part because you have a sidearm. And in my research, I've only found 2 cases. There've been 347 instances of gunfire on K-12 schools in the country from 2013 to 2019. 2 of which were where a armed SRO was able to discharge a firearm for the benefit of a student. And this was one example was a young man bringing a gun to school and attempting to shoot his girlfriend who broke up with him, and she did die, and an SRO did take that gentleman down. But the research is just not there to justify, in my opinion, that I have not found any research that says an armed SRO has more oomph, so to speak, than unarmed. So that was my alternative, was simply to remove the sidearm, but not the number or even the contract itself from that we're voting on now.
So there's nothing in the contract about firearms. Firearms are not even mentioned in the contract.
Then we would have to that's where we would have to negotiate, because like Chief Sizemore said, the expectation is that the Clark County Police Department whoever was hired into this position would bring their sidearm with them. So we would have to stipulate otherwise. I mean, it's part of their uniform. It's part of their.
So is Georgia still an open carry state? Okay.
Yeah.
It is. Of course, you can't carry firearms around schools and stuff, but as a trained officer, you can. But it is an open carry state this day.
And so this, again, my concern here is that we don't have control over who walks onto our premises, and if they do or do not know. So I think this to me feeds into the bigger question of not only just school safety from the standpoint of a child or a student being unruly. It speaks to our safety for our entire school in the event of an active shooter kind of situation. And I don't want our safety officers confronting an active shooter with no sidearm. I'm sorry. So, and again, thank you, Dr. Yeager. Since the contract isn't about that, if we need to go back and do something else with the operation and how we implement that, I think there's another process for that. It's safety.
Okay. Dr. Anderson, and then we'll move to take, was there another question? Dr. Anderson, Ms. Gallagher, and then we'll take a vote.
So I've heard, this conversation is very perplexing to me, and from what Mr. Davis is saying, if we don't have the data and anecdotal evidence and the support to say SRO officers are a vital part of the safety of the students in our schools, then what is this vote for? And I read the documents that Ms. Davis sent forward, kind of iterating the trajectory of having SROs in our schools, and it stemmed from that situation that happened at Cedar Shoals. And so I do see that there's sort of a background story to it, but I haven't seen any evidence from that point to today that shows that there's a benefit, that the parents or stakeholders in our community see a benefit to SROs. And so again, if we can address it from a policy standpoint, I absolutely support it, but I also would love to see some more evidence that this is something that's positive for our student environment and for the feelings that our parents feel when they send their kids to school. And that's the only way that I would support this. But if I don't have that in front of me, then I can't support it because I don't know what I'm supporting.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. If I'm not mistaken, and I don't, former board members, I feel like we actually received some data. Of course, it wasn't updated at some point as related to like just the number of arrests and things like that that had happened, but I could be, my memory could be fuzzy and I can't look at it right now. But
we totally have, yeah, we received that data in the past. There are federal guidelines that safety data has to be reported. I believe that last year, as a result of an incident with AADM, and there was a whole discussion and investigation by the staff of bringing policing in-house, having our own police force, as opposed to using Athens-Clarke County. That data is not even 2 years old. And so if that's the information that needs to be brought to the board so that we can have this conversation, then I think that would be a worthwhile thing to pursue. But
I feel like we have it.
For the 8 years I've been on this board, we do this every year. And so I'm ready for us to, put this in some type of document so that new board members, actually get to see the history of how we got to this decision. And we can see the cost benefits of continuing the relationship with ACCPD, because this came up again in 19, and I think it may have even come up again in 20. And so every year we end up at the same place. And so nobody's willing to walk away from the relationship with Athens-Clarke County Police Department. And so I think that, again, the SRO agreement, the way that was meted out, is the compromise that we came to. So that's just my experience on the board talking.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Davis. Ms. Gallagher, if you could make your comment or ask your question, and then I am going to ask Dr. Thomas to take roll for us, since we do have the motion by Ms. Davis and we have a second by Dr. Yeager. Ms. Gallagher?
Okay, I was just gonna say, when we do get the data, if we could start looking into, just the school culture and climate, when we collect that data, just add a piece about, SROs being in the building, and then that way we always have that data that comes out with everything we present on a regular basis. The culture and climate also goes to the LSGTs and to parents. I think that's one way to get some data that matches with the actual school building and not outside opinions about what happens or does not happen inside of a school building, because we aren't in there and we get to make decisions about it, but we don't know what it looks like on the inside of a school building, or if parents are okay or not okay. So just getting data from the people who are impacted by the decisions that we get to make, I think, will help avoid a lot of this extended conversation. That's all I got.
Thank you, Ms. Gallagher. And so, I do want to reiterate, as this may have implications for Dr. Yeager with policy. I don't know if this is a special call policy meeting, Dr. Thomas, or I know, Dr. Thomas, you mentioned that you all already have a committee that's looking at how we support students. But to Ms. Gallagher's point, this is definitely, I think, a larger, future conversation and how it ties into the direction that we're going. But I will pull us back to where we are. We do have a motion by Ms. Davis, and we have a second by Dr. Yeager. And so, Dr. Thomas, if you would take roll on all of those in favor of the action to renew our school resource officer MOU for 2021-2022.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis?
No.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
Dr. Yeager?
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Gant?
Yes.
Attorney Hall?
Yes.
And Dr. Maddox?
Yes.
Thank you. And I will reiterate that we will continue to, this is aligned, and this is what I'm liking about even where we are with our strategic plan, to be able to articulate alignment. It aligns with climate and culture, as someone already stated. And this is very important work that we're committed to, and we will move forward with that work group and engaging community members and getting data from all of our stakeholders about their feelings and their needs, and then working to have a response that supports that.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move forward with, we have here the action to approve our temporary committee. And just as a reminder, last week we discussed that some of our committees would be left with very few people. And so Ms. Palmer sent us an updated, well, a committee, a list of everyone that's on our committees. And so, as you can recall, this will be one of our agenda items. We will discuss committees and make a decision on if we want to make some changes to committees, if we don't, how to move forward. But until we do that, we do need to confirm our committees. And so if you would take a look at that document that Ms. Palmer shared with us, as you can see on our finance committee, we have 2 remaining people. That's Dr. Dykeman and Ms. Davis, but Mr. Worthy and Mr. Stevens are gone. So we do need at least another person, I would think. And Mr. Pruitt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think we at least need a 3rd person, even if we don't get 4 people for the committee. And with our government relations, it's in the same, it's the same situation where we have Dr. Yeager and Mr. Davis, but Mr. Stevens and Dr. Knox are no longer on that committee. And then policy committee still, all of those members are still here. And then with our property committee, we have Dr. Yeager, myself, and Ms. Davis, with Mr. Worthy having left. And then the superintendent evaluation committee with Dr. Dykeman, Ms. Davis, and Dr. Maddox, with Dr. Knox having left. And so I'm just going to, I guess, open the floor for the board. Ms. Pruitt, but can you clarify, is it okay if we, when we make these temporary assignments, that a committee just has 3 people on it?
That would be fine, but if you do that, you just need to put in the motion that you are confirming it as a committee of 3 rather than a committee of 4. One suggestion, by the way, and you may have already heard, and this was not my idea, I'll give credit to Lisa, but if each new member just took the place of the board member you replaced, then you would have, you know, every new member would be on 2 committees.
I think that would be great. What do other board members okay with that, or new board members?
I was about to suggest the same thing. If they did that, they'll just, because it's temporary and we are going to discuss this, so it's not long term. It's not forever.
I'm okay with that as long as I'm not chairing any of them.
I'll be a good sport.
Okay.
So, Kara, I think you were chair of the superintendent's evaluation. I thought for some reason, maybe I'm not vice chair of finance. I thought I was, but okay.
Lisa asked me to, and I honestly didn't remember because Charles was there. So.
I was until I saw this piece of paper.
All right, well, if we're okay with that, but everyone is out of my view right now, so I can't see if, Dr. Maddox, if you could help me, I can't see if people have questions or objections to that.
Yeah, I think we might be having view issues.
And I was inside of a document as well. Was that Ms. Gallagher?
I'm good.
Okay, I thought I heard.
I think that was me, Nicole.
Oh,
okay.
So I know that I was planning to have conversations about some of our policies and continue those conversations. So would that mean that I'm no longer invited to have those discussions? Because I want to have those discussions.
Me too.
No, I would think that I think our retreat will happen soon enough so we can begin to talk about like what our participation looks like on policy, but I don't want to step over into Dr. Yeager's area as well. I have very strong feelings about how many people actually participate during that time just because of the use of our time, but I don't have to, moderate and take those meetings. So I don't think it means that you won't be able to participate, particularly if we take some of these conversations that we've had, let's just say even the example about law enforcement, and if we are having a larger conversation around that. But that's my opinion. Dr. Yeager, do you have any specific things to add to Nicole's, to Attorney Hull's concerns?
Yeah, well, I think both Ms. Gallagher and Ms. Hull, and well, actually all three, Dr. Anderson also made really great contributions to policy during the past 6 months. And so they've been well trained and well inducted into the policy process, which, yeah, we need to discuss further how we want to do this policy revision in the future. But yeah, of course, I would welcome their continued input on all of these policies, particularly policies that I know you spent a lot of time thinking about. So, I'm sorry?
I was going to say, does that not move us into the challenge that we had when I was participating in those meetings too, as a board member?
Yes, it does. So we might have to, we have to figure out a different model. And so, but I understood we were going to talk about that at the retreat, not tonight. Tonight is just a temporary.
Right, absolutely.
Well, to me, do I have the capability of nominating either Ms. Hull for my position at policy, or Ms. Gallagher? I mean, is that something I can do?
That is, well, actually, so what I would recommend is, if the general consensus is that we just keep the committees the same right now, and only replace the people that are missing. In a couple of weeks, we can really delve into this, right? So if we want to change the whole makeup of policy committee or superintendent evaluation committee, so that's what I would think would be the best course for tonight. And then also, it's not necessarily about a nomination. From my understanding of our policies, we sort of select, we decide like which committees we're going to be a part of. And so that would be my suggestion, because I don't want us to get too far into like trying to refigure the committees for 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay, I'm just willing to step aside, and so I'm, and because we have a policy meeting coming up, and I'd just like to see new board members take a crack at it, because I feel like I've done it long enough.
Greg, I agree. I'm willing to also do that, but what Dr. Gann is saying, that this is temporary. This is for right now, as we're even talking about how we are planning to even restructure our committees. So this is temporary, but I agree with you, and I'll also be willing to step, to switch, move around to a different committee to give a new board member that opportunity. But this is not for a long period of time.
Okay.
So to complicate things, Mr. Pruitt, Dr. Gant, is it possible to say temporary Board of Education committee list for January 2021 to define what temporary is? I don't want to be stuck. I want to be on a policy committee. And so I'm just putting it out there.
I don't think you will be stuck.
Okay.
Anything is, to make the motion and it goes, I would caution us against making it January, simply because we're meeting on the 29th and the 30th.
Okay.
And, just to give us some wiggle room. And I think we all trust each other. I don't think, the good part is that I don't think any of the former members are, from what I can tell, are like just dying to, on the committees that meet for hours. And so,
okay. Fair enough.
We all support you all, your involvement in these committees. But certainly, Ms. Hull, if that is the will of the board, And not if it's the will of the board, if you would like to make that motion after we have this list completed, you can.
I'll back down. I'm gonna go on back now.
Okay, what I'm gonna do, Ms. Hull, is that, and I'm just being upfront, and I'm gonna tell the chairperson, Dr. Yeager, I will not be attending the policy meeting, and so that would be 3 board members there. The issue was the 4th. Is that correct? I mean, could she participate then if I'm not there?
No.
Not if
Okay,
she's not a committee member.
Right. How about this? Let me try to move us forward a little bit, because I certainly understand your concern, Mr. Davis, as well as your desire for individuals to participate. Might I suggest we start with finance, and we'll go down to policy, and understanding that these are temporary appointments. We have Dr. Dykeman and Ms. Davis. Are you two still willing to be on finance for the next few weeks until we can resolve this?
Yeah.
And I can't.
No, we already did that in our last meeting, so yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And Dr. Dykeman?
Yes.
Okay, so we need 1 or 2 members. Can someone volunteer?
But they've already filled in, Mumby and Karina.
Okay, I can't see the, I'm working in a different document. I'm sorry, I made my own copy. So I can see.
Yeah, they've already replaced Mr. Worthy and Mr. Knox, or Dr. Knox, and Mr. Stevens with the people who now hold those seats. So the tentative list is already prepared and out there for you to look at. If you can get it to you, they can get it.
I think the only thing, if I can jump in, Dr. Gann, I think the only thing not resolved is chairing those 2 committees that Mr. Worthy was chair of. I heard Dr. Anderson say she doesn't want to chair them, and I understand that. So if perhaps in the motion, if the vice chairs of those 2 committees just moved up to the chair spot, again, this is just temporary.
And I think that's what Robert's Rules of Order would call us to do too, is, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I like that.
Okay, and so we have the understanding, thank you for directing me back to the original document. Before us, these are the committees. These are our temporary committees, and that our vice chairs will now be chairs. With that policy committee, I see Mr. Davis is still there, but you mentioned you won't be attending, but that'll still be a quorum that'll be there.
Well, I mean, again, I'm going to make an amendment to the motion that board member Hull temporarily join the policy committee.
I appreciate you, Mr. Davis. You don't have to do that. I sincerely appreciate you.
I want you to get out the gate. I want you to get out the gate strong. So anyway, that's my motion.
Okay, well, we haven't made, I don't think, has the motion been made yet?
No.
The original motion? Okay. Just, I guess for the sake of clarity, and if we could go ahead and put Nicole's name where, or Mrs. Hull's name where Greg's is, and just remove his name. Again, the goal, the preference is for us to really take care of this within the next few weeks. But just to sort of save us the confusion of modified motions, if you could put that there, if the board is okay with that. So the list that's before you is what we have. All right. Is there any additional discussion around this before I open the floor for a motion?
So can we clarify the policy or property committee that Ms. Davis is now the chair?
Okay, on the document.
And do we have on finance that Dr. Dykeman would be the chair? Yes.
That's your preference. We go.
Okay.
Did we not ever publish our committee chairs in the past?
Yeah, it's on the website.
Okay.
Oh, you mean the chairs? And the committee members is, but I'm not sure the chairs.
They are listed on the website, I believe.
And Ms. Hull, I just point out that Mr. Davis's kindness has now put you on 3 committees.
Saw that. I was not going to utter a mumbling word since I just got what I wanted, but yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, and so hopefully we'll be able to, discuss this a little bit more. Everything that you see on the screen is temporary. So if we need to change the committees, if we need to do away, if we need to keep all of them, if we need to change chairs, vice chairs, change the number of committees you're on, we certainly can do that. All right, so the floor is open. Thank you all for your help. The floor is open for a motion.
I move that we adopt the committee structure temporarily as presented.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Davis made the motion and Dr. Maddox the second. For the record, are there any questions or discussion? All right, Dr. Thomas, if you could take roll for us for all in favor of adopting our temporary committee appointments.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Davis,
Yes.
Dr. Yeager,
Yes.
Dr. Dykeman,
Yes.
Dr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Gant,
Yes.
Attorney Hull,
Yes.
and Dr. Maddox.
Yes.
Yay, awesome. Okay, we're done with that. That motion carries, and that document is updated for us. Thank you, Ms. Palmer. We are at 13.1, which is adjournment of our board meeting.
Dr. Gant, may I say something really quickly before we adjourn?
Sure.
Okay, I would just be remiss if we did not pause and thank Mrs. Lynn Duke for her service to Clark County Schools. Ms. Duke has worked with Clark County. She tells us frequently since she was 19 years old. This has been her main place of employment for her entire life, and she has worked and served our students and community in many capacities. And we just want to publicly thank her for her service to Clark County School District and to all of our constituents in Clark County, and wish her well in her retirement. I would also at this time like to announce that we have hired Dr. Selena Blankenship, former principal of Hillsman Middle School. She also worked as an associate principal at Clark Central High School and in other capacities within Clark County, and she is going to be our new Chief of Human Resources. And we've hired Dr. Marsha Francis, who is currently in Fulton County, but did her graduate work at the University of Georgia and served some of our schools with student teachers. So she's very familiar with our community and Clark County School District and has worked with us in a graduate student capacity. She has been featured in some national articles and is very respected, as is Dr. Blankenship, and she will be assuming the position of Executive Director of Talent Management for our HR department. So we are sad to lose Mrs. Duke and wish her well, and we at the same time welcome our 2 new employees for our Human Resources Department. And lastly, those are my positives. I do want us as a Board of Education and school district to please remember the family. And I feel comfortable now saying that because it's in many mediums of Willie Craddock Jr., who was a star student for Clark County School District. He has spoken to many. He had some published books. He spoke at our kickoff to our leaders to talk about the impact, I'm sorry, not leaders, to our whole staff, to talk about the importance of teachers and school staff in the lives of children. And if you don't know his story, you should Google it and read his story. He was working on his 3rd book and had done a book bag drive for our students. Over 200 book bags donated with supplies. And he lost his life this week. And it's a huge loss. Any loss is a loss for our school district, but Willie Craddock Jr. really touched students, staff, and community alike in a way that can't be measured. And I can't end this board meeting because we're about children. And hearing his story and talking about and reading how journaling changed his life and it turned him into an author, that's what our work is about. And sometimes we get distracted. Again, I told you all, I'm not a politician. I don't run for office. We get caught up in political components of our work and we forget the children. And he taught us so much about the role of having an adult in your life. So as you go about this week, I just ask that you think of his family, and that family extends beyond blood to pretty much every aspect of Clark County School District is hurting right now. And so please keep everyone in your thoughts, and let's maintain our focus on changing the world for our children, because that's what it's about. So hate to end on a somber note, but I could not end without acknowledging the impact that he has had on our school district, students at Clark Central, Cedar Shoals, Career Academy, staff throughout the district. We have to acknowledge that loss. So thank you, Dr. Gant.
Thank you for those reminders, and certainly our condolences. I think there are many people that were very saddened, very, very saddened and just shocked to read that. And so thank you for mentioning that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I'm sorry, before we leave, Ms. Duke, when is your last day?
The 29th, last day of the month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for so many years of very, very faithful service. You've been through some stuff, so yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank all of you.
Yeah.
And I'm devastated with this news because I didn't know it, and that's because I tuned out for the last couple of days, but I'll tune back in now. So thank you. Sorry to hear that.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Duke. We are at adjournment. The floor is open.
A motion, we adjourn.
I second.
Okay, Mrs. Hall.
Now, who said I couldn't be flexible?
Made the motion. Ms. Davis was second. I understand that there are no objections. We are adjourned at 8:02 p.m. Have a good night, everybody.
They say.
Bye.